Hello everyone, my name is Luke Swinkels and I'm so excited to see you here on the first lesson of my course How to Compose Classical Music for Dummies. For those that do not know what this is all about, feel free to watch my introduction video first. For those that have already seen it, hello, welcome to the first lesson. And the first lesson will be on how to read sheet music. Now, I know that there are a lot of different people watching to this. Maybe you are completely new to music. And if you're completely new, then this video is for you. This is exactly why I'm doing this video. But I can also imagine there are some people that are already playing an instrument for 1 or 2 years and they simply already know how to read sheet music. So for those who already know how to read sheet music and chords, scales, feel free to skip the first 4 or 5 lessons. For those who are still here, welcome to lesson 1. Today, in our first lesson, we are going to look at how to name notes. We're going to look at clefs, why we use clefs. We are going to look at G and F clef. We're going to look at time signatures and how to count in 3/4, 4/4 and in 6/8. So, this is what we call music. This is the Western music notation. Now there are probably a lot more notations. The most famous one, alternative one than this is, for example, tap you have on guitar. And all around the world we see multiple forms of notation. But in the Western classical music and in most of the Western world, this is how we use it, and which is what I'm going to cover in this course. And probably you have all seen this before. We have 5 lines, we have notes, and some fancy stuff at the beginning. The fancy stuff at the beginning, the first thing you always see and look for is the clef. And we have the time signature, which is our digits, and the actual notes. And in between the clef and time signature, we have a key signature, which is this weird hashtag. But this weird hashtag's for another lesson. That's not for today. So how does music works? We have, as I showed, we have 5 lines. And on here there can be notes. And these notes have names. But we need to have a reference point. It's the same as degrees. Degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit. If you give me a 10 an hour, do you give me $10, 10 euros? Therefore, to give meaning to notes, we need a clef. And a clef is a musical symbol used to indicate the pitch of notes. And it's always at the beginning of music. It's the first thing in music. And because there are different ranges of instruments and voices, we have different clefs. For example, if a guy and a girl are singing together, they both use different clef. Why? Because, well, a guy simply most of the time can't sing as high as a girl, and a girl usually can't sing as low as a guy. Of course, there are exceptions, but that's why we have different clefs. It's also if you have double bass or cello, which are quite low in pitch, versus a piccolo or a flute or a violin. That's why we use different clefs. And the most used clefs are the G clef, also referred to as the violin clef, and the F clef, also referred to as the bass clef. And we also have the C clef, which I will cover another time, and some more clefs, but G clef, F clef, that's at least 90% of all music, if not more. So I'm going over both G and F clef and how we can read notes. So first, G clef. In music, we have the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And after G comes A again. And a clef shows you how to name the notes. If we have G clef, which is this symbol at the beginning of the piece, this says that a note on the second line from the bottom is a G. No matter how the note looks like. If we have some sort of a dot on the second line from the bottom, this will automatically be a G. And after G comes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and this keeps repeating. And you can see that we have notes on a line, followed by between lines, on a line, between lines, and this keeps alternating. A way to remember the notes is by the sentence, every good bird does fly, which are the notes on the first line, E, second line, G, B, D, and F. Every good bird does fly, which is what you can use. And you can make notes if you are not familiar with reading sheet music. This is maybe a good time to make a note. So using this, oh yeah, of course, there are multiple G's and F's or A's, which is what we call different octaves. Do, 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 do. I'm not a good singer. I apologize. But they are about the same. When we are going to have musical examples, it's more easily to hear. I think, yeah, this is an example. It's about the same note, therefore we name it the same. So let's just do a quick exercise. We are only 10 minutes into learning music, and I'm already giving you the first exercise. Can you name the notes of the given music below? And you can just use our sentence, every good bird does fly. Feel free to pause the video and do at least a few for yourself. And don't worry about how a note looks like. How a note looks like doesn't matter a single thing. The vertical position of the notes on what line or between what lines just tells us what note it is, how it's called. No matter what the shape is, this dot doesn't matter, this weird thing doesn't matter, the position of the note. That is how we look at the names. So feel free to pause. So the first thing you always look for is the clef. We are in G clef. What did G clef mean again? G clef means that a note on the second line is automatically a G. And then above A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc., etc. So if you look at the first note, it's on the second line. Therefore, this automatically is a G. That's easy, right? So note 2 is 2 steps above, because G, then we have one space in between the lines and then one on the line. So G, after G comes A, B. The second note is a B. Or you can use the sentence, every good bird B. It's a B. Using that sentence, you also know what note 3 is, because it's on a line, right? Every good bird does. It's a D. Or you can go from B to C between line 3 and 4 and up to the 4th line is the D. Notice how I'm thinking. If you had much trouble with it, try to pay attention to the way I'm thinking. You can either use that sentence or you can just count them out. And well, at the beginning, it takes a lot of effort to identify notes. But once you are doing this more and more often, you just immediately know some of the notes without thinking. But when you first start, it probably takes some time. And if you now know a bit better, you can pause the video from here and try it for yourself again. And it's not that much about how long it takes. I rather have you spend 5 minutes and have most of them correct than spending 1 minute on it and having half of it wrong. Because at the beginning it just takes a bit of time, but the more you practice, the more easily it will become. And at this point, in the beginning of learning music, it's a lot of doing. So the third one was a D, and the fourth one is a B again. Why? Because it's on the third line and it's the same as the second one. Notice it's on the exact same position. Third line, every good bird. Or you have a D, you go one space below C to a B. Well, the fifth, well, it's not on a line. but it's between the second and third. Second line, every good, and the third line is every good bird is a B, and between G and B is A, because after G comes A again. Note 5 is an A. Or if you know that 4 is a B, you can see that the fifth is only one space below, and before B comes A. Then the sixth note is what's the same as the fourth one. It's a B again. It's one space above, and well, 7 is one space above B, which is a C. Or between line 3 and 4, every good bird is B, thus D between B and D is C. Then the 8th note. Well, it's between line 2 and 3, every good G, B, between G and B is A. And then we have a G because it's on the second line. We have an A again, B one space above, and the 12th note is G. And here are the answers given. Now it might take some bit of time, but I rather want you to think longer than just guessing things wrong. Because, well, after 6-7 lessons, I kinda expect you to read notes quite easily. But we are going to practice lots, so don't panic. And I even have an extra playlist, which I will have in the resources in after one of the first few lessons. So don't worry, I got you. But this is how you read notes in G clef. Now we also have F clef, and unfortunately you read notes differently, which makes music a bit more difficult. But you have both G and F clef in music, so we need to learn how to read them both. So the F clef is also known as the bass clef, and bass is spelled wrong, my apologies. And well, it indicates where the F is. And the F is between these two dots. So on the fourth line from the bottom is the F. And once we know the reference note, we can know all other notes. Because below F comes E, D, C, B, A. Before A comes G again, F, etc. And you can use the sentence, good boys do fine always, to know the notes, the note names on the lines, G, B, D, F, and A. And feel free to make a note of this sentence, since this can really help you. And well, same as with F clef, just let's immediately practice, because that's all we need. We need to practice so much. So even though we have a different sentence to remember it, it works the exact same way. So feel free to pause the video if you want to and try it for yourself. So we are in F clef, also referred to as bass clef. And what did that mean again? That meant that a note on the fourth line is an F, no matter how the note looks like. So we have a note with a dot, but that dot doesn't matter because we see the note is on the fourth line, therefore it automatically is an F, no matter how it looks like. So number 1 is an F. The second one is one space below F, from on line to between lines. So before F comes E, it's just before in the alphabet. Or you can use the sentence, good boys do fine between D and F, between D and F is E. The third note is an F again. It's the same note as, it's on the same position as 1. Now notice 1 has a dot, 3 has not, but as I already said quite a few times, no matter how the note looks like, it's on the fourth line, we are on F clef, it's automatically an F. The fourth note was the sentence again, good boys do fine always. Always, A. 4 is an A. Or you can go from the third note, which is an F, the between lines is G, and after G comes A again. So 4 and 5, same position, 4 is an A, 5 is an A, and then 6 is a G, because it's between, fine, always between F and A, F, G, A. 7 is on the 4th line, automatically an F. 8 is an E, because it's one space below F. And the 9th note is again on the 4th line, meaning it's an F, because we are in bass clef. And here are the answers given. So now we know a tiny bit on how to name notes, but it's also important to know how long a note is. So our note is called depends on the clef, right? Because we have G clef and F clef, and we saw just a few minutes ago that the notes are named different in both G and F clef. But how the note is in length depends on the time signature, which is this 4/4 thing. So even though we have all B's here, because they are all on the 3rd line, we are in G clef, every good boy B, all B's, but the notes look different, and that has to do with the duration, and we need a time signature for that. So before we look at a time signature, we need to look at the different notes. So let's take a look at them. We have a few different notes, and we start with a whole note, which is just a circular dot. Every time we add something to it, the length of the note decreases in half. So if I add a stick to it, I add one thing to it, the whole note becomes a half note. If I add something more, which is making the dot completely black, it becomes a quarter note, or 1/4. And if I have a flag to it, which is how we call this fancy thing, it's called an 1/8 note. And there are more when you have multiple flags, but that's not something we're gonna cover now. And it's actually very simple. One whole note is as long as 2 half notes, because 1 equals half plus half. And a quarter note is as long as 2 8 notes, and 4 quarter notes is as long as 1 whole note. It's just, so far, it's quite easy math. So how long a note actually is depends on the time signature, and the most common time signature is 4/4 or 3/4. But what does this actually mean? Well, we have, let's first look at 3/4. Okay, we have a top number 3 and a bottom number 4, as we can see in the sheet music. After the clef, you can see the time signature. Top number 3 and the bottom number 4. The bottom number, the 4, tells us which note is 1 beat. And the top number tells us how many beats there are in 1 bar. So since the 4th note is on the bottom, this means that a 4th note, a quarter note, is 1 beat. And there are 3 beats in 1 bar. So if the 4 is on the bottom, so a quarter note is 1 beat, right? So a half note, which is twice as long as a quarter note, would be 2 beats, right? So what we have here, and an 8 note is then half a beat. Why? Because, well, a quarter note is 1 beat, because 4 is on the bottom in the time signature, and an 8 note is twice as small as a quarter note, meaning it's half a beat. So let me clap this rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Notice that the half note is 2 beats and the 8 note is half a beat. We also have 4/4. We have a top number 4 and a bottom number 4. The bottom number, same as in 3/4, means that the 4th note, the quarter note, is 1 beat, And there are now not 3, but 4 beats in one bar. And the duration is the same in length. The fourth note, the quarter note, is 1 beat, meaning that the half note would then be 2 beats. And a whole note would be 4 beats. Let me clap this as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We also have 6, 8. So again, we have different numbers, but it works the same way. We have a top number 6 and a bottom number 8. The bottom number tells us which note is 1 beat. So now not a 4th note, but an 8th note is 1 beat. And there are 6 beats in one bar. So this time the 8th note is 1 beat, therefore the quarter note is not 1 but 2 beats, because a quarter note is twice as much as an 8th. And a half note is now 4 beats. So let me clap this as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's practice. Let's do a final exercise from this lesson, because there is a lot of new stuff here and I don't want to have too much in this lesson. So look at the example down below. You see a short piece for violin and cello. 8 notes are numbered from 1 to 8. Read the following questions and try to answer them. And here are the questions. Now feel free, because practicing is key. Doing things for yourself is really important, and it may take quite some time. But if you do think a lot about it, you are developing a way of thinking that you really need in music. So feel free to do so. And well, if it doesn't work, if you do not know the first one, just wait for me to explain it and try to pause the video after that then instead. But try for yourself first. So the first question. How does the clef chord, and why does a violin have a different clef than the cello? How does the left chords? We have here the violin clef, also known as G clef. And we have the bass clef, or called F clef. Why do they have different clefs? Because there is a huge different range. A violin is a bit high pitched as an instrument, where the cello is more low pitched. Generally, there are some exceptions, but most of the time cello is in F clef or an alto clef, but that's for another time. Name the notes from 1 to 8 and always look for clef first. So note 1 is, hold up, we first need to look what clef are we in. We are in G clef, alright. What did G clef mean? G clef means that a note on the second line is called G, right? And we can use the sentence, every good bird does fly. So first note is on the second line, that's G, that's easy. Bam. Then the second note, that is between line 3 and 4. Every good bird B does, between B and D. So line 2 is the C. Or you can go from G to A, B, C and just count the spaces, but note 2 is a C. 3 is between line 4 and 5. Every good bird does D, fly F. Between D and F is E. So note 3 is an E. The fourth note is on the third line. Every good bird B. Easy. And the fifth note is on the second line. Every good G is a G. Now the second note is, the sixth note is on the third line. Every good bird B. So for those who thought it was B, that's incorrect. Why? Because, well, the smarty pantsers under you already saw that cello has F clef. So this is not a B. What did F clef mean again? We are now in another clef. Hold on, we need to think first for a second. What did F clef mean? F clef means that on the fourth line between these dots is an F. We can use the sentence. Good boys do fine always. So now let's think again. What is note 6? Good boys do, it's a D. Very nice. The 7th note is between line 2 and 3. Good boys do between B and D. B, C, C. C is between B and D. And the 8th note is same as 6. Good boys do is a D. Now lastly of all, give the length of the notes from 1 to 8. And always look for time signature first. So what time signature are we in? We are in 4/4. What did 4/4 mean? We have meaning the bottom number 4 means a fourth note is 1 beat, and there are 4 beats in 1 bar. So the fourth note, the quarter note, is 1 beat. And the quarter note, that was this note, right? Quarter note, because we have a whole note, and then we add a stick half note, and we make it black quarter note. So 1 is a quarter note, meaning it is 1 beat. Now the second one is a quarter note, but with something on it. Every time we add something to it, the duration decreases by half, meaning this is an 8th note. It has some kind of flag to it. So the second note, a quarter note is 1 beat, and an 8th is 2 times less as a quarter. So an 8th note will be half a beat. I try to think in a logical way, but no matter how you think, if you got it correctly, then it's all fine. The third note is again a quarter note, which means it's 1 beat. Now the 5th note is a whole note. It's just a circular dot, and it is 4 beats because it's 4 times as much as a quarter note. Also, because we are on 4/4, there are 4 beats in one measure. We only have 1 note in this measure, so having it 4 beats is really obvious. Now 6. Even though we go to an F clef, doesn't matter. We only care about key signature when we look at duration, and we are still in 4/4. So the 6th note is a half note. Excuse me. And a half note is twice as much as a quarter note, meaning this is 2 beats. The 7th note is also a half note, also 2 beats, and the 8th note, whole note, is 4 beats. And here are the answers. So let's recap. In this first lesson, we talked about clefs, why we need it. We looked at G clef, also known as violin clef, and we looked at F clef, also known as bass clef. And we can remember them with the 2 sentences. Every good bird does fly, and the sentence good boys do fine always. And we looked at time signatures. 4/4, 3/4, and 6/8. We now have the first step in learning how to read sheet music. In the next lesson, we will learn more on how to name notes and how to count. And I will also talk about how to construct a major scale. So I would like for you to Google something like a beginner violin pieces or beginner cello pieces or for flute, and try to read something for yourself. Now you will see quite some stuff that you do not know because we haven't talked about it yet, but it will be a good idea to maybe just 10 minutes every day for like 1 week. I think that's good enough to get you to read sheet music more fluently, because when we are going to look at scales or at chords or at a full piece, we are not looking at one note, we are looking at more notes at the same time. So it's really important that over the next 2 or 3 weeks you get quite good at reading notes. But we will going to learn more about that in the next few lessons, so don't worry about it. So that's what we're going to do in the next lesson, and I will hopefully see you there. I hope you are excited to learn more about music than we covered today. So feel free to watch this video again if needed, and if not, in the description you will find the whole video course as well as the next lesson. So this was lesson 1 on how to compose classical music for dummies. I hopefully see you in the next lesson.